And it's Thursday. It's 5. We're live. Welcome to Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm. Set as we see it, and frankly as well. I'm Joe Springer, along with Paul Crowley and the Honorable Council President, Darren Sayre.
So I'm not honorable?
Here's on. No, you're not.
I know I'm short. Look how short I am.
He keeps thinking he's short. Maybe you are. Frankly Joe. Let's put that up so we can get the show on the road. According to new data acquired from Constar Group, Inc., rents in southern Essex continue to rise, except in Lynn. The most expensive apartments north of Boston are in Peabody. Revere also is showing strong rent growth, driven primarily by several new waterfront developments. Peabody's rent grew at 4% over last year, Revere's by 5.6%. Meanwhile, Lynn's rents remain flat, which is rather ironic considering that the nearly 2,000 units traced by Constar, only 39 were empty, a whooping 2%. Yet somehow Lynn has managed to defy the economic law of supply and demand, which begs the question, why? Our number here is 781-780-9460. Gentlemen, why is it that our rents are flat?
Can I just say that I'm not sure I can count on that poll or whatever it was they did.
It's CoStar.
And the reason for, I mean, obviously they know what they're doing, and I don't mean to take anything away from them. But anecdotally, I have not heard anything like that. I've heard everything to the contrary.
Right.
People are saying that the rents are going off the charts, you know.
And they are. I mean, you look at on Eastern Ave, I'll give you a perfect example. A one bedroom unit, first floor, is $1,200.
Yeah.
One bedroom unit, all right? And you go to a 3-bedroom unit, and they're getting $1,500 to $1,800. So, in a lot of outside agencies are putting people into the Lynn apartments. So that's probably why you got the 39 that are empty.
The reason why I brought this up, gentlemen, is because in response to what was reported in the item, and I wasn't sure of it, I thought the rents were going up, and you're saying you're challenging the article, and you're challenging it also, correct?
Well,
correct.
Well, you will hear the housing advocates. You know, what's that guy? Isaac Holt, was that his name?
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
Complain about affordable
complaining
housing.
that there's not enough affordable housing.
Right.
You hear that all the time. So what is it?
Well, here's what they said. The first quarter rents in 46 buildings surveyed in Lynn was $1,353, as opposed to last year, $1,334, which wasn't that much of a jump, fairly flat. But where the other communities went up 4 and 5%. So, I mean, you could argue
that's all new construction they're talking about. You take a look at Revere Beach, what's going on down there, and up along Route 1 and in the back of all the buildings that are up there. So, and you'll probably see the same in the next few years in Lynn with the development of the Lynnway, starting with the Beacon Chevrolet site and then moving on down to the gear plant site.
That begs the question, and that's the whole point. Revere is booming now.
Right.
And their bond rating has gone up.
Right.
Improved as a consequence of all that development along the beach.
Right. The rent, the taxes are going way up, and they have a decided advantage over us. They're a little bit closer to Boston, obviously.
Right.
But more importantly, they
They're
have
on the blue line. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And if you take a look at all the development that is going on, it's not just on Revere Beach Boulevard where there's 4 or 5 pretty good-sized projects that are taking place, but also as you get into the downtown area, there's a lot of projects going on. The same thing over in Beverly. Look at what's going on Cabot Street and Rantoul Street.
I ask you then, why is it, and we're going to get to the master plan in a second, the 206 master plan. So if Lynn were to ape what's happening in Revere, in Beverly, and all the communities you're talking about, wouldn't you say that would be to our benefit?
Big time.
Big time, right?
And we're on the cusp of that right now. We really are, because once the Beacon Chevrolet site starts...
I keep hearing this.
And it's very close to starting.
I keep hearing that.
But it's also the fact that the amount of land that's along the Lynnway in the back of all the car dealerships, all the different properties that are there, there is an effort right now to bring all those different landowners, and there are 62 of them, into a room and to sit down and start discussing what the potential is for down there on the Linway. That's one of the reasons that community development, EDIC is funding a new study down there that's over 10 years old.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that very shortly. Now, as you can tell, I dye my hair in order to look like a sage.
Yep.
You know,
You look
it's
good.
just not my natural
You look
color.
good, Joe.
So, in my sage state,
Yep.
I've been listening about development on Linway since Tom Costin was mayor.
Right.
And you know what's happened?
Nothing.
Well, there's a
The
windmill
power
that
lines
Paul
have
loves
been-
down there, right? You know
the
that
power
windmill you're in
lines
love
have been
with?
moved, right.
Yeah. I mean, and then there was the argument was the power lines all the time.
Yep.
I never hear a 781-780-9460. Next week we'll be able to go by telephone. They're working out the kinks.
Right.
Now we're going to go the old way.
Right.
Paul, I want to go to this master plan. So let me read the stats, and then both of you guys can work on it. In 2006, that's when you went on the council, correct?
Yep.
Okay. A master plan envisioned by Sasaki Associates. Am I correct on that?
Yep.
All right, here's what they said. They said there'd be 4 million square feet of apartments and condos, 2 million square feet of retail, office, hotel, and light manufacturing, 5,000 permanent jobs, and a whooping 18 million in real estate tax revenues. I'm still waiting.
I'm still waiting.
I'm still waiting too. So let me just say that the premise behind those numbers was, there's a key thing here, and the idea was to set the zoning up in such a way that it would attract that type of development,
Yeah.
residential and commercial, as the highest and best use, so that the people that own the property would be incentivized to move in that direction.
Right.
You move away from the car lots and so forth, because the value of the property would be so much greater
I
if
hear
you went
that,
the other way.
but did it happen?
It didn't. So, and
why?
I know you don't like to hear any excuses, and it's been over and over and over again, but let me just tell you a couple of quick things. First of all, 2006 we come up with this, right?
Yes.
2007 and 8, the real estate market collapsed.
Yes.
All right? And then we had the lackluster years under the Obama administration where there really wasn't any growth. Then you had essentially now a vibrant economy where what do they call it? They've unleashed the animal instincts of capitalism to kind of get things
Let
going
me
again.
stop
And
you,
now we're
Paul.
starting to.
But wait a minute.
And it's
What
cyclical.
counters that, everything you say, what counters that is the fact that Revere had the same situation and yet boomed. You mentioned Beverly,
But what
and
they
other
did-
communities,
Revere-
despite all of those economic things, did very well. Why?
And all of those communities already had the infrastructure in place, the roads, the water and sewer, the electricity for all
We
of
didn't?
that.
We
No.
had probably the single biggest obstacle that we had
Good.
could be summarized with the power lines, but the reality was there was really no vision of ever using the waterfront for anything other than industrial. Like, you know, they got the gas tank, they had the central station for the national grid, they got
GE.
the sewer treatment plant, they got the dump, you know, they got all, and so had a lot of obstacles to overcome, and they ran the power lines right along the water's edge. You know who's got the waterfront property? It's the seagulls who sit on top of the wires. You know what I mean? That was really what we had.
Paul,
So I blame that on the lack of vision from our forefathers.
100 years ago or
Right.
more, right.
Right.
you being the courteous individual that you are, and you're not a partisan type of guy,
Right.
you were at the Charlie Baker affair.
Yep.
That was about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago,
Right.
Paul?
Right.
In
Yeah,
that
it was in
range.
March sometime, yeah.
And I went there, and you hosted it. And while I was sitting there, two gentlemen approached me who are doing that Chevrolet site.
Yep.
Okay, Arthur?
Arthur and Louis Minicucci.
Yes. They approached me, and they were very candid. And I said to them, I said, how's it going on that? They introduced themselves. I didn't know who they were. I said, how's it going? They said, you know, we get too many obstacles. The regulations are killing us. We're
Coastal
trying to-"
zone management.
State and federal, right.
Right.
Not
And
city,
so-
state and federal.
So they want to get rolling, and they've been blocked at every stop. Why? That's the question.
Greenies. Greenies is probably the best way to put it.
Which is
It's
that?
Environmentalists.
Right.
They're stopping
They're
it.
they are. you
Well, the
know,
restrictions that
over
are
the
being-
top with
right.
the protectionism along the water's edge and so forth. The biggest thing is there's like a retaining wall that has to go up where the boardwalk is going to go.
Yeah.
And the way I understand it, there's the technology from 20 years ago that would be used on this plan would cost about $3 million to do, right? The engineers for the developer have come up with the latest and greatest technology that can be done at half the price, yet the state bureaucracy is insisting that they use the old method. And that's at the crux of the matter right now.
Well, let me ask this. Wasn't the mayor of the city of Lynn a state senator?
Yep.
He was.
Don't we have state reps that are supposed to be fighting for these types of things for the city of Lynn?
Yeah, and I'm sure they are.
And they are.
Then
They
what
are.
is stopping it? I mean, now we're saying that the state is the obstacle. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, well, let me tell you
State and
something.
federal.
Unelected bureaucrats have more power than you might
Right.
think. And yeah, I just to give you,
Appointed to different
But
committees.
isn't that the same phenomenon that all communities have to face? That's my point.
well, again, I'll go back to the underlying infrastructure issues that Lynn faced all along. Just think about Revere Beach, where
Yes.
a lot of that development is going. What was that 50 years ago, 40
It's a
years
marsh.
ago? No, it was the
it was a
waterfront.
circus.
It was
Carnival.
it was basically
Yeah,
a
I
year-round
went there all the time.
Revere
Talking
Beach,
about
right?
You're talking about the Ferris wheel and the roller coasters and all that stuff.
So when that stuff came down, it was easy to put something up in its place that
Not
was
really,
more.
Paul, because that's all marshland. That's all marshland. They had to do some special piling down there. That infrastructure was challenging.
But it was still land that they could use to develop because it was already been developed in the past. If you wait, like, for instance, there's some land that we're losing along the Linway because every year it's being overtaken by wetlands. And the longer we wait and when we don't develop it, there's less that we're going
Right.
to. We're probably losing like a couple of 100 feet a year along there. So eventually you're going to wind up losing a couple of acres.
Look, I happen to know that you're pushing hard for that Beacon Chevrolet. Say, Paul, that's a baby of yours. As long as and both you guys are on track. And I wish the folks out there understand you're working at it. But they also got to get behind you and give you the support that you need to put the pressure on to allow development to take place.
Yep.
And you're right. Once you anchor that site, the Chevrolet site, then you got the gear plant. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
It's like a snowball, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
plus also the South Harbor site, which is also a very big site for development
All right.
too. Now here's the thing,
Go ahead.
and the big if here, and this is where the state does two things, in my view. Bureaucrats do two things, in my view, that are anathema to good, smart development. One is they don't understand that time is money. You know what I mean? So in other words,
Yes.
they don't care how long it takes for the process to work, and they don't realize that, these guys, they've been buying options on the property, and this is the way I understand it. So they buy options on acquiring the land, subject to getting the proper approvals, and they keep paying these options and options, and eventually it becomes cost prohibitive. And if they miss the market, if the market softens, all of a sudden their modeling goes way down, and they can't project it to be the right kind of income.
That's
And-
what happened to the
what
site
power-
originally when Grenice and Costin and all of them owned the Beacon Chevrolet site. The market just fell right out.
Right, while they were trying to get
Can
their
the city
approvals.
take any property by eminent domain for the common good of the city of Lynn?
It can, but we don't have the money to do it. You'd have to have a developer that would already be coming in.
And there wouldn't be any change. I mean, if the city were to take it so
Yep.
that they could, it would ostensibly so that they could develop that land a little faster, they would still run into the same state obstacles.
And you know what, though? To be honest with you, to all the landowners, it would be worth the city, to them, to have the city come in and take an eminent domain because they're going to get anywhere from 15 to 25% more than what the value of
The
the
market
land
rate
is.
would be?
Well, I'll tell
Yeah.
you, owning that land fully developed and collecting rents on 350 units is going to be better than a 25%.
No
premium.
doubt about it. But as long as all these people have been sitting on the parcel of land, and we've said it before, that it costs the same for a yard of concrete in Lynn as it does in Boston.
That's a good point, but we're going
But
to
you're
take a
not going to
break.
get the same rent in Lynn that you get in
We
Boston.
talked about that before. We're going to take a hard break. We'll be back. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Lynn Community Television, your local media center. Here, we have great resources and staff to help create your own content.
Hi, I'm Jim Carrigan, host of The American Dream. I'm also a member of Lynn Community TV. And I want to encourage everybody out there who's not a member of Lynn Community TV to join the group. We have a lot of fun down here. The studio is new and it's in fabulous
Things
condition.
provided to our members are state-of-the-art studio, video and audio equipment, editing space, and a full-on training session with a staff member.
I've been involved in access television for over 20 years. Our shows have gone out to tens of thousands of people in local communities and millions throughout the world. Come on down, learn how to use the equipment to promote whatever it is you're doing.
For more information, please visit our website at www.lyntv.org, give us a call, or come on down to the station at 181 Union Street in Lynn.
And we're back. Dan, before we go any further, last week it was my era. You wanted to talk about a dear friend of yours who's no longer with us, and I know we're late on it, but
Yeah, Paul Floyd, which a lot of people do know him, and for those who don't, he's played an active role in the city of Lynn since he was a little kid through show business. He actually starred on Broadway in The Unsinkable Molly Brown, The Music Man. He was on The Ed Sullivan Show. He made an album with Slim Pickens. He's done a lot of things. And then later when he came back to Lynn, he worked with the Lynn Police Department. He did the PAL shows down at City Hall for years, which was a 2-week run. And you go, and the entertainment was unbelievable. He'd start up on Route 1 at Prince of Pizza for many years. He was at a place up in Chelsea, up in Lawrence for some years. He had 2 different bands. One was called Tall Paul and the Pallbearers, and he used to have them bring him out in a coffin, and he'd sit up in the coffin. And he was a character. He was on your show quite a few times.
He was on the last iteration of the show. Right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And he just rapid fire.
Oh,
So
he was great.
So fun.
He was with the Sheriff's Department for a long period of time,
he
wasn't
was a superintendent at the Sheriff's Department. The thing about Paul was he could work at any job. He was a school teacher
Yes, I
for a
remember.
number of years until they found out that he didn't have a college degree. And I mean, so he could fake his way, and to him, life was nothing more than a movie. And everything that was around him was a prop. He could take anything and make people laugh and joke. And
He certainly
I
could do
see a
that.
twinkle in your eye when you talk about him.
he was a very dear friend. He was like a big brother to me.
To the Floyd family, the relatives, sincerest condolences.
He'll be
Is
missed.
that the right word?
Yep.
X marks the spot, and I want to get to that. Apparently, they put these big X's on buildings, and I didn't know about this. And the giant X tells firefighters to fight the fire from outside of the building only. With a touch of irony, a word I'm now using, the once venerable Anthony's Hawthorne and 7 other properties are designated with a red X, reminiscent of Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter. 3 other properties have half X's, signaling firefighters use extreme caution. However, in both instances, if someone is believed to be inside, they go in.
Right.
Huh? I think this all came about because of that fire they had over in Worcester a few years back.
Well, they've had the red X for many years, and it's all about safety for the firefighters. And there are some dilapidated buildings that are in Lynn. And I'll use one as an example that was years ago in my ward. It was a house that had been vacant. It was a 3-family house that had been vacant for more than 20 years. And the property owner would come by every year and he'd do a little bit of work on the property. And at one point he took out the floor on the first floor as you come in the back door. So there was no electricity in the building and there was no plumbing in there. So if you stepped through that back door, especially at nighttime, and didn't know the floor wasn't there, you'd go right down into the basement and you'd get hurt. So if a firefighter was going in that building to fight a fire, he or she could get extremely hurt, and that's
So it's a
not
good thing.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a good thing. I would say, though, to me, it's really, the limits to what the city can do to get landowners to protect the city from dilapidated properties. And what I mean by that is, what would be better, and a good example is the Hawthorne, right? We want that land developed, and we're at the top of the market. Why aren't they developing it, And there really isn't anything that, we can't force them to do it. We can penalize them.
But there
for
is a
this.
reason that they're not developing it and selling
But
it.
isn't
It's
there a
because
property- I
it's
mean-
considered contaminated land.
That's the point.
Because of the white
The
laundry
laundry
and-
used to
Because
be
of
there,
White's
and then
laundry,
that's what's
right.
causing the problem.
Right.
The cost of detoxifying the
Contaminating it,
land,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's
There
where
are
the
different things you could do with it. It could be considered a brownfields. So you could build something on it,
that's
but it's going through the federal process of getting it declared also as a brownfield.
once again what Paul talked about is when you get
Yeah.
these greenies. Let me go back. Let's go backwards for a second. And folks, here's our number here: 781-780-9460. So give us a little call and tell us what you feel about anything. But Paul, when we talk about rents going up, and Council President, if rents go up, we can argue that it's a good thing and a bad thing. It has a double
Right,
whammy. First of
right.
all, you folks are going to pay more on your real estate tax
Right.
because all property values are going to go up accordingly, right?
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
All right. But here's the thing. Guys like Isaac, the guy that you referred to,
Yeah.
they're going to start screaming and yelling about rent control,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
They
Am I right
always
about
do.
that?
Yeah,
They always do.
there's always needs to be a healthy push and pull between, the desire to create wealth and taxes, by the way.
Right,
By
right.
the way, put yourself in the position of the mayor or even Darren
Well,
as
yeah,
council
the
president.
city benefits-
He wants to increase the tax base, but he doesn't want people to get out of homes because they can't afford them. So
Right.
how do you have to find a balance in there? And to the credit of Isaac Holt, who, sometimes I think he goes a little overboard or whatever, but to his credit, I think he is an important balancing act so that we are at least trying to,
But is rent
balance it.
control the answer?
No.
No, and
That
neither
is
is
never proven to
and-
work.
and Isaac, and you're right. He's a good guy. His heart's in the right place, but he wants a certain percentage of all new development to be what he calls affordable
Right.
housing, and we don't need to bring in. We don't need to create more affordable housing to bring in more people into the city.
30% of our city's stock is built.
So
Affordable
what we
housing
need to
income.
do is take care of the people that are here. And the new development that we do, it has to be created, so we bring in what we call disposable income. And it's people that are going to come into the city that aren't going to have an impact on our school system. We have over 16,000
Yeah,
kids.
you want to have a net positive for all
Exactly,
these new folks
and
that
we're
come in.
always going the opposite way into the negative. So, and I'm not saying that we can't do something to make it so that there's affordable housing in Lynn, and what affordable housing should be anyways, it should be that if you're working and you need a place, that you should be able to afford to live in the community that you work in and live in.
Darren,
Can I just say an interesting thing, and we've talked about this in the past, really around violence, but the biggest cities across the country that are politically controlled by the Democrats, the liberals, and so forth,
Right.
are the ones that have the highest rents. It's part of the problem that in
Well, that's
these
why the
cities.
Democratic Party does so well on the East Coast and the West Coast, because that's where the larger populations of, I guess you could say, needy people live.
Right, but if the rents are through the roof in San Francisco and Boston and Lynn and places like this, and it's controlled by people that ostensibly are trying to help the poor, there's a
You've created a society of dependent people. is
you know
what
what's
they've done.
laughable about this? My granddaughter recently got married. You know that, right?
Yep.
And her husband is involved with the Baker administration. She has a fairly decent job with Brown and Harriman. Wonderful girl. They live in a rectangle in Boston at $3,500 a month.
Yeah.
I can't conceive of paying $3,500 a month.
And there's no-
you
and they
could
have no
buy
space.
a house in Marblehead Neck for that mortgage. Caller, welcome to Frankly Speaking. Caller, can you provide an update on the blue line coming into Lynn? Who is advocating for us at MassDOT? Roberto, what do you say to that?
Okay, here's what's going on. The gray line, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but
The gray line?
The gray line goes into Logan Airport. It's actually on the south, out of South Station.
Okay.
It's going to be going out of Chelsea. So what you're going to be able to do is get on to the train here in Lynn, go to Chelsea, get off at the Chelsea station, and get onto the gray line, and you could go to South Station. The gray line will take you all the way in South Station going the other way. The blue line, I mean, the only way we're going to see the blue line is if they incorporate it into the train.
If they do what?
Incorporate it into the train, using the train
Expand the
tracks.
Sure.
Right.
That's the only way we're going to see it, because
Well-
the right-of-way to the blue line coming through Revere has been built on for years.
There is always a way if there's a will.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
there
it's
is
a
no
matter
will.
of will. And if we push hard enough, and a lot of folks have a vested interest in not bringing the blue line into Lynn for whatever their reasons
Right.
are, you know, it's a double-edged sword. I think that Tom McGee, this is where I give him a lot of credit. He's worked on infrastructure connectivity, which is a key
Right.
to the city of Lynn. If we can get to downtown Boston, we're only 9 miles away, Paul.
Right.
If we can get to downtown Boston 15 to 20 minutes, this city's going to boom.
Well, what you could also do is, and I'm like thinking out of the box, and it'll probably cost a lot more, and it may not, I don't know, but you could build a, like they have down in Disneyland.
Tram.
Yeah, high above the ground. They
I
actually
agree.
have it in Washington,
Yep, absolutely.
and
Chicago?
Chicago has them.
Like an L.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do, but the problem is that for some reason the North Shore always gets the shaft.
Yeah, we get to pay the tolls and
We
all that
pay
stuff.
the tolls.
Oh, yeah.
They extend the red line and the green line,
Yeah.
and the blue line never gets extended. So.
And we have what you call the gray line,
Right.
which is some type of hybrid of something or other.
what the gray line is, actually, it's a bus. And I don't know if you've seen them, but they're two buses that are connected into one, and they can run on electricity or they can run on gasoline, and it's their own somewhat highway, I guess is the way to describe it. There are no other cars or no other vehicles on it.
Right. So, but back to your point that whether there's a will, there's a way type of thing, and I think that interestingly enough, as long as I've been involved in politics, this goes back to 2005, it's about 13 years. I would say that the question of the blue line I hear once a month, on average.
Yeah.
When are we getting the blue line?
Daily.
When are we
Yeah.
We're not getting one. It's just, I mean, there's no desire to do it, and even when.
Well, it's not that there's no desire, but it's the money. And I don't know if you remember, 25 years ago, the federal government gave us like $150,000 to do a study to see if it was needed. And then that they found that, yeah, it was needed. Now, you don't have to give me $150,000 to do a study to make a decision.
I would have
whether-
done it for 20 grand.
I would have done, yeah.
There's a study that's supposed to be done on development on the waterfront for $75K.
Right.
You know, I mean, and they'll come back with an answer in a year.
Let me tell you
Who
something.
cares about the $75K in a year?
And again, you have to think out of the box.
How
And I
much
mean,
money, you think about how much money we spend, as a
On
society
studies?
on studies and consultants to
How
come
about
in.
Lynn Water Sewer Commission? When I was on there, every other day they're trying to hustle you for $500 grand to rewrite the study they did the year before.
Right.
It's unbelievable. Folks, we're going to get to the Frankly Spelling Bee. Or not Spelling Bee, it's Speaking Bee. Frankly Speaking Bee. You got that one?
I got it.
So get your pens out, and we'll give you the answer at the end of the show. Number one, and you kids better not come up with any hints. What is the only continent that covers 4 hemispheres? Secondly, in land area, what is the smallest country in the world? What country spans 11 time zones? It can be 7 a.m. in one time zone and 6 p.m. in the other. That should be easy, don't you think, guys? Huh? Even you can get that one.
I bet I could.
Canada has latest census, 35.85 million people. This state has 39.14 people. What state is that? In other words, the state has more people than all of Canada. People think Canada's being a big country. It's not that big. 35 million people, you know. How many stripes on the American flag? That's subject to debate, whether it's red, white, or all, right?
Yeah.
And then there are 4 C's named after colors. What are they? And here's the trick one. Try to name the 6 U.S. state capitals that begin with the letter S. Try naming them. So, that's our B. Now, I want to go on to a subject that you guys have to, we got a couple of minutes to break, so we're going to introduce it, and this is going to consume the rest of the show, trust me. Whoops. Moody Investors Service has lowered Lynn's bond rating to A3, from A3 to Baa1, whatever that means. Worse still, it's deemed that Lynn's financial outlook is negative. The downgrade reflects ongoing structural imbalance. We've talked about this often, about the structural imbalance. You particularly, both of you have been very vocal on this.
Yeah, the inability of the city to take the necessary corrective action to fix the problem.
You're trying to do that. And the council can't do a thing about it because you can't write a budget.
Right, exactly.
All right. Now, the need to issue deficit financing notes to plug the budgetary gap in fiscal 218-219. That's the money we just went out and borrowed. That's what they're concerned about, right? The bond issue. An expectation that Lynn will be challenged to match recurring revenues and recurring expenditures. That is an important issue. Now, the pressures from rising mandate educational costs have to be considered. We've got about a minute. Let me see if I can get down here. Rising school enrollments. Both of you and I have been screaming about this for years.
By the way, this is information that you pulled off of a news story, right?
I did.
Yeah.
Right.
So this isn't you.
No, this is not new stuff. This is John. I pulled it off because they read it, and I want you folks to respond to it. Sure. If it's accurate, you know, if it increases in the share of school funding, state requirements that the Lynn fix years of underfunded schools. I have no idea what that's about. And here's the warning for further downgrade or grades. If revenues drop, or future imbalanced budgets, or failure to raise revenue and lower costs, we could go further down. Ironically, Revere's bond rating has gone up because of development.
Right.
Because the revenues have gone up, which is one of the bigger things. Could you go back to that screen, Pedro?
Yeah, well, we got to go to a break, and then we'll pull the screen up when we get back from the break, and you guys can go through it point by point, okay?
Sure.
We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Start a story. Adopt at theshelterpetproject.org.
And we're back. Paul, I want to go to you because you're an accountant by trade. You understand how to balance. Plus, you manage a very substantial budget over at Gliss. And also, as council president, your hands are tied in some of this stuff. So if we can put up that stuff again and go point by point. Can we switch further up, Pedro, to the beginning of it? There we go. So, what about this ongoing structural imbalance?
So, you know, the big part of that is the faster than normal growth in student population that we can't
Is
keep
that the
up.
primary mover?
I would say
It's
that,
part of it.
that's a big part of it.
Insurance.
But that's
is
a
the other
big
one.
chunk, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Not, insurance covers a lot of it too.
Someone told me that we had 700 new students last year.
We did.
800, I thought.
Yeah, it was probably more
Well,
than
if you have
700.
700 new students at 13.6, and that's
With-
conservative,
Without the population of the city increasing.
that's right.
Explain that
figure
one to me, right?
yeah.
Right. What's happening is there are students that are coming in from other countries that are being sponsored by family members that are already here, but there are also what they, not undocumented, but
Unaccompanied minors.
unaccompanied minors, which could actually be as old as 20 years old.
Yeah, there was a guy with a gray beard, remember?
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
coming in.
but wait a minute. Now they're saying what they did to my siblings when they came to this country. They were not allowed to go beyond the 9th grade, even though they varied in age, 4-year differential between the oldest and the youngest.
But why should
so
you
they're
even
putting
put it-
these kids, some of these kids 20 years old in the 9th grade.
Right, exactly. And would you want
No.
your granddaughter
No,
or
I
your,
don't.
your
And that
12 or
also-
13-year-old?
So there are other issues involved here. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Over and above the fact
Yeah.
of budgetary
So
issues.
the way to deal with this really gets back to your premise that in order to fix the problem, we have to stop it from continuing. If your basement is flooding, you have to get the water shut off.
Got to get the pumps.
Right? Well, no, you got to get the water shut off first.
Oh, of
then
course.
you get the pumps
Then
out.
you pump it out. Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And there doesn't seem to be any interest. Even they talk about the deporter in chief. The new administration is not letting anybody in and kicking people out and all that kind of stuff. But the fact is that it continues to grow in our community, and that I think boils down to kind of a sinister thing in my view, and that is the self-interest or the special interest of the agencies that get paid to process these people.
Right.
They are going to continue to get those
Of
people
course. And that's the sad situation.
But also, you take a look at the resources that those agencies use. The fire department has to respond to all the medical calls every single time. And, not that every single one of them is a real medical emergency. And you have to have a fire truck that shows up. You have to have a police car and an ambulance that shows up.
Total response.
Yeah, right. And no matter what the issue is. Right. So, I mean, and then some of these families have some kids that are in the family that are involved with gangs and other crime.
You know what's fascinating? I read an article in which if you take the 10 filthiest screwed up cities in the United States, 8 of them are in California. Does that tell you something? And California is really being pressed because of illegal immigration, right?
They're having an internal revolt too, which is pretty interesting.
The people now are starting to revolt against it. Here in the city of Lynn, there's an attitude here in Massachusetts. Oh well, we're all immigrants, we're a nation. You got to get away from that.
Let me tell you, all the pundits that get out on the air and say, you know what, we need to do this, we need to be more compassionate, it's our moral obligation, whatever they say, are the ones that, at the end of the day, they go to their nice, lily white, gated communities,
right.
and they don't have the challenge. They don't have to deal with the challenges day in and day out.
Well, I'll give you a good example. The former president of the United States lived in a walled, forget about gated community. He lives in a walled house.
Right.
All right.
He built a wall.
Yeah,
Before
he built
moved
the
in.
walls around his property. And if it works for him, what about the nation? You ever think of that one?
Yep.
I mean, it's awful.
Hey, by the way, I was in D.C. for the last 3 days.
Yeah.
And when I was at the airport, I was picking up a T-shirt for my wife, and I'm walking through, and I look, and there's a T-shirt hanging up there. Right, I couldn't stop laughing. It was a great T-shirt and had a picture of Barack Obama, and underneath it says "Miss me yet?" Miss me yet? ? And I said, not at all.
They used that with George W. Remember?
Yeah, they'll say the same thing about Trump.
So, the borrowing, that's a 10-year span.
Right.
And tell me honestly, both of you, I have said that we're fundamentally on receivership light. Am I right or am I wrong?
Technically, it's not in receivership. But
I'm not talking about technique. I'm talking about in reality.
No, the reality is that it's not. Receivership is that what happens is the state comes in and they nullify all the contracts, the insurance benefits, your taxes, if you think that $90 was high for a trash fee, they'd come in and they'd impose a $230 trash
Well, whatever
fee
they
on,
would do.
on
but
everybody.
The real key is that in a receivership, the mayor and the city council would have no authority.
Wait a minute. I said
there
light.
would be a little bit of authority there. And what it would be is the mayor and the council president, along with an overseer from the state, and I'm not sure who the fourth person
We have an
would
overseer
be.
from the state.
We do have an overseer.
Okay.
The fourth person, every single thing that would go on in the city, every bill that would be paid would have to be approved by the overseer and the council president and not the council. And the mayor.
But why is it then that Moody is suspect of that? Because Moody, in effect, is saying
Because of
that,
our history of the last 8 years with what we've done with the budget.
So that, yeah.
So I would just add that the same reason that the state of Massachusetts is concerned and had some expectations, namely that there was going to be an overseer, or what was that name of that position, that title? Was it an overseer?
An overseer.
Yeah, so they had some caveats. In other words, we'll do this for you, but here's the deal.
That's what
because they're concerned.
That's why I said
Yeah, but-
light.
Now it's up to the city to do it right, or they'll fall further back.
Right, and
that's
the
what-
overseer that we have is more of an advisor than an overseer. We can.
But he has to sign off.
No, he
otherwise-
doesn't.
No.
Oh, he doesn't have to
That's
sign
what
off?
he does. No.
But I will tell you that it's going to be, the city of Lynn and its elected officials will be hard pressed to go against what the overseer
Right.
suggests, because they've got 2 years to turn this thing around, or things go south in a hurry. So
Yep.
they.
Oh, let me ask
And,
this.
and I actually mentioned this to the mayor after the vote, because as you recall,
Right.
I was against it from the beginning, and then when I heard what they were going to do, I supported it. But I told them, I said, look, you don't have to worry about re-election. If you do all the things that you need to do to really put the fiscal house in order over the next 4 years, you're a shoo-in to get reelected. And that's really
Of
a
course.
reality.
But is he temperamentally fit to that?
Well, that's another
You
matter,
got to
but-
understand the philosophy of the Democratic Party, which is pretty much they like to spend.
I'm going to tell you something. I think he is, and I'll tell you why I'm going to say that is because he's in the middle of negotiations right now with all the unions, and he stood pretty firm against what the unions were wanting, and he wasn't giving in. And I mean, thank God they all sat at a table and they negotiated something.
Oh, they got
And it's to the
arbitration, too.
Well, they do, but the two groups got together and both got what they were looking for. And
We'll
he
see.
didn't give away what everybody would think that a Democrat would give away.
Well, we'll find out from the caller. Caller, how are you? Welcome to Frankly Speaking. A wall will not work unless we have guards behind the wall to support it. That is a point made, and we're going to take that up on the commentaries because that there is a lot of truth to that.
Right. No, I agree. I mean, the premise that you just put up a wall and then everybody goes back to work, that to me gets back to the thing that I raise all the time. And when I was on the city council, I used to get very frustrated when we would, pass legislation, some type of ordinance, and then we would go on to the next matter.
No enforcement, no follow through.
Not necessarily. I mean, it's not that
A lot
it
of
wasn't-
it's symbolic.
Yeah, but for example, let's just take that vote that you guys made to charge the fee, the trash fee on the non-resident multifamilies, right? You passed it. It was great, and then what happens months later? You come to the realization that they couldn't figure out how to do the billing and all that kind of stuff. So
There was other reasons why it didn't go.
I understand, and I'm not saying that you guys did anything wrong. What I'm
Right.
saying is that the work begins when you pass the legislation, not ends.
Yep.
And sometimes I think we build the wall. Well done, and we move on.
No,
you build the wall, you put up all the protections, and you have to monitor it and pay attention to it. And a big part of the solution
Let me ask
is
you a
what
question.
you're going to do to manage it.
Do you know any prisons that just build a wall and they don't have any prison guards?
Right, exactly.
Same
But
point.
the other thing is, too, that the wall that we're talking about is 3,000 miles away from here. It's going to take years for us to fix the problem that's here in Lynn because there was no wall.
Right.
That's right.
Right.
But if the wall goes up, it's going to definitely deter the influx. Instead of
Right.
700 students, you might get 300,
Well, but,
which is
but
a
see,
benefit.
a lot of those students that are coming in aren't coming in that are illegal. So a lot of these students that have come in the last few years are coming from countries that our government are helping these kids come into this.
Well, they should send the bucks along with
Right.
it. Caller, welcome to Frankly Speaking. Do you think Lynn would benefit from a K-9 unit? If so, why don't we have one? Paulie E.
So
Money.
Yeah. So
They sniff the drugs, don't they?
They do. I mean, but it's money. And
we
You
used
don't
to
think
have one, right?
It's not cost effective?
We used to have a lot of things in the police department, and a lot of it's had to have been eliminated in the last
Well, let me
few
ask you
years.
this. When the kids were being asked to talk about the new superintendent, you know, when they did this study, one of the things the kids talked about was putting K-9 dogs into the schools to sniff out drugs and guns.
And they do bring canines in from Essex County.
Right. That's
The sheriff's
right.
department, they do it a couple times a year in different schools. And can you see if there was a dog in the school every single day and it nipped at one of the kids in there, the amount of parents that would be coming out?
Right.
I mean, we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't. We
Yeah,
have
we gotta get-
resource officers in all these.
Look, the ACLU and all of those wonderful liberals, when it comes crunch time, you can't find them. They thought it was perfectly okay to infringe upon the Constitution when it came to Michael Cohen, right? Oh, they kept them up. Oh, it was perfectly legitimate. Normally, they'd be screaming their brains out that it was a violation of the Constitution, okay?
So getting back to the matter of the K-9, I would ask the question, where is the unmet need that the not having the K-9 unit is leading to? So, you know, Tim, I appreciate the question. I'm just wondering, do we find ourselves in a situation where we're constantly, you
Needing a
know,
K-9?
frustrated because we don't have one? I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, and I also believe that we have the access to the state police K-9 unit, the Essex County Sheriff's K-9
Right.
unit when we need it and so forth. So maybe we do need one. But, you know, we used to have, do we need somebody that can go around and clean up graffiti all day, every day? We used to have that too. You know, it's a question of priorities and resources.
Well, first of all, we shouldn't be worrying about cleaning up graffiti if we taught the right values, correct? Now, maybe we
starts
should
right
do a little
inside
bit,
the home.
Huh?
Which starts right inside the
Yeah,
home.
exactly. We got a couple of minutes before break, and I just want you to explain something which I don't understand at all. I hope that one of you two or someone out there can. The state requires that Lynn fix years of underfunding the schools. How is that possible?
Okay, so, and Darren, I know can speak to this, but let me just point out that back when Judy was the mayor, it was discovered, and correct me if I'm wrong, Darren, but there was they checked the box back in like 1991 saying that they opted to exclude
Right.
the health insurance from the calculation of net school spending, and they
That was
and
the
then-
sum total of this thing?
and the,
technical
and
error?
the state came in and said,
Technical error,
you were
right.
doing it wrong all along.
Wait
so,
a minute. That you're talking about over 20 years ago?
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to go to a break, and we're going to discuss this right when we get back, folks.
My friend James Gandolfini and I got to know a lot of combat vets over the years, and it guts me that 22 of you are taking your own lives every day. Wounded Warrior Project is here to help. You don't have to go it alone. You hear me? You don't have to go it alone.
The tick population only seems to be growing. And while they may not cause any noticeable symptoms right away, ticks can cause allergic reactions and spread dangerous or even deadly diseases. Reported in all 50 states, Lyme disease is a worldwide infectious disease spread through tick bites and growing at epidemic proportions in the U.S. Be sure to check yourself and your pets for ticks, especially if you live in grassy or wooded areas. For more information on ticks, how to prevent them, treatment, and more, please visit www.cdc.gov/Lyme.
We're paying for the sins of the past, apparently, huh? I mean, someone didn't check a box and it's $15 million later for the city of Lynn? It's nice, how do you do?
Right.
Yep.
Oh, it is, and you know, I get really frustrated when I hear. I mean, legally, yes, they were obligated to pay, and by the way, it wasn't money they needed to pay to the state. What net school spending refers to is a requirement that in order to get funding from the state for education, that you have to promise to spend a certain amount of money in the school system. So after the kids have been educated,
Yeah, I
you
understand,
can't,
but
you
you're
can't
talking
undo
about
that.
health insurance, isn't it? Wasn't health
Right,
insurance
right,
was the
health
issue?
insurance.
So how does this have anything to do with education?
It does.
Well,
I
it
said
was,
the
it was
employees.
health insurance for retired employees, I believe, right?
No, I couldn't.
Can we check on this and bring this up on the next show because it's a complicated issue?
It's very complicated, but I will tell you that the math on it was, you know, I go back from 1991 to 2010, let's say. So a 19-year period. They recalculated and they said you missed, and they added it all up. But I mean, over 19 years, all those kids have moved on, and if you say that they weren't properly educated, the money shouldn't be going to the state. We should be giving it to them so that they can get that education that they're missing, or something like that.
But the money didn't go to the state. The money went back into the school budget.
In effect, it goes to the state because the state doesn't
Listen,
have to pay it.
We got to move on. We don't have much time in this segment. The show moves very rapidly here. Quickly, May 1st is coming up, and we have property taxes are going to go up. We need revenue in order to make sure that we don't go into receivership or that we get downgraded. And we're going to have to pay a trash fee. And I, Joseph S. Spina, Esquire, get a little benefit because I'm a senior citizen.
Right.
So I'm going to save myself, what, 20 bucks?
$20.
20 bucks each half.
Yeah, twice a year. Feel the pain? Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, I'll tell you, for 90 bucks per household, we've got a lot of angry people out there. I mean, I hear it all the time.
Yeah, but it's the principle, Paul.
Yeah.
It's the principle. And then wait till they have to pay for the Lynn Water Sewer Commission because Capano wants to separate the water sewer at $100 million. 106, say some people, I say 150, whatever. Witty. Fellas, comment on this. John Adams, one of my favorite presidents. In my many years, I have come to the conclusion that 1, useless man is a shame. 2 is a law firm. And 3 or more is a Congress. You like that one? Albert Einstein, only 2 things are infinite. The universe and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about the farmer. Mae West, my mother should have thrown him away and kept the stork. Kurt Vonnegut, if your brains are dynamite, there wouldn't be enough to blow your hat off. King Edward VIII. The thing that impresses me most about America is the way the parents obey their children. A lot of truth to that, you know. Milton Berle, one of my favorite, Uncle Milty. You can lead a man to Congress, but you can't make him think.
Actually, Congress is not required to think. They just do what they're told.
Remember Timothy Leary, who was high on acid, right?
Yep.
He said, women who want to be equal with men lack ambition.
That's a good point.
Groucho Marx, he may look like an idiot, talk like an idiot, but don't let that fool you. He really is an idiot. And Darren's all-time favorite, Muhammad Ali, if you can't make penicillin, or if you can make penicillin out of moldy bread, then you sure can make something out of you. And that's about it on that. Let's go to the comments. Guys, take a look at the comments. You got yours there, Paul?
I don't. Thank God you read them. I'll
All right. This is, Tim called about this, that walls only work if you put boots on the ground. You agree with that? And he mentions that he spent 6 months.
I would say that
In Guantanamo Bay.
So it's not an either or. Walls work better if there are boots on the ground.
How about this one from Emily Joden? Is the city sending out May tax bill? Darren?
Yep, they are.
Are they on their way now? Oh,
Look forward to
If
it.
you didn't get it, probably within the next week.
shortly. And will that have the trash fee on there too?
Yep.
And make no mistake about it, even if the city is late sending the bill, you should not be late in paying because they will whack you good.
This is interesting. We got a comment from Greg. He says the waterfront meeting, and if you had a better idea. Frankly speaking, the waterfront meeting is happening on April 30th. Is that accurate? It is? Are you aware of it? I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
Is this for
Yeah.
the public to go?
Is it going to be at this, in the
Well,
chambers?
we can.
The council chambers?
I'm not sure where they're gonna do it yet,
It's at the museum, okay.
the museum.
Are we going to be able to tell the folks where it's going to be?
The Lynn Museum.
At what time?
6 o'clock?
6?
Is that right?
And this is to discuss what we were trying to talk about, development and the master plan that isn't?
Yep.
Okay, folks, the museum, the 30th, which is
That's,
13 days from today,
That's
right?
a Monday. I
Is it a
believe.
Monday?
I believe it's a
A
Monday.
Monday at 6 at the Lynn Museum,
Yep.
and you can discuss this waterfront that they've been discussing for as long as I've been alive, and that's a long time.
But can I just say something?
Yeah.
though? It's easy for a lot of people to come in and say what they would like to see on the waterfront. But again, like Paul was saying earlier, you can't force property owners to do what everybody else wants them to do.
Thankfully, by the way, that's why
private
we're a
property.
democracy. Yeah, look, I agree with you
I mean,
totally.
we're all entitled to our opinion.
I agree with you
Absolutely.
totally. I think the thing that bothers me more than anything else is what both you and Paul talked about all of the roadblocks the government does, and all these outside, and these bureaucracies.
It gets worse and worse every year.
That's the problem. I mean, you both complimented Isaac. Yeah, he might be a nice guy, but he's an obstacle.
He is an obstacle. You're right.
Okay? I mean, he's one-minded.
Well, let me just give you an example of one of the biggest dilemmas that we've ever faced as a municipality. So they passed these laws about sexual predators, right?
Yeah.
If you're a level 3 sexual offender, you can't live within 1,500. So we passed. So the level 3 sex offender is not guaranteed, but very likely to reoffend. They let
Yeah.
them back into society.
And violently. That's
Really?
what level 3 means.
We gotta talk about this.
So
Yeah.
it's violent, and they're likely to reoffend. So the city passes an ordinance saying we don't want them near any of the schools. But frankly, kids aren't just hanging around the schools. You know, they're everywhere. So we're in a situation where nobody wants them in their community. Nobody wants them in the backyard. I certainly don't want them in my backyard. I don't want them near anywhere
Well,
near my
what are they
kids.
doing in the community? That's the first
They have a
question.
right to
That's-
live wherever they want.
That's my point, and my point is that the to protect the rights of those people that have these level 3 sex offenders.
They forfeited their rights, Paul, when they decided
Well,
to do what they did.
So that's part of the argument for sure. But my point is they create these crazy sets of circumstances, and they say, this is the reality. You deal with it, and they throw them into the communities, and then we have to figure it out. And it's a mess.
We got sued.
We have a lot to talk about on our next show because this one is rapidly ending. Fellas, have a great week. You folks out there, we'll get to all of these new issues next week. Stay tuned here at Frankly Speaking Live at 5.